After the real daughter of the family returned, I went back to the village. My ex-fiancé, who is far away in the UK, sent me a message. It's snowing in London. I miss you so much. What are you doing? Feeding chickens. Gabula, before Christmas. Will you come to see me with chickens? I refused. No way. My grandma will beat me to death. Also, don't send me messages anymore. Your fiancé has changed. When Gabula sent me a message, I was feeding chickens in the village. It's snowing in London. I miss you so much. What are you doing? I scattered a handful of corn on the ground and freed my hand to reply. Feeding chickens. He was never a wet blanket. The UK has entered daylight saving time. Will you come to see me with chickens before Christmas? I took a look at the free-range chickens beside me, and then looked up at my grandma who was cleaning up chicken wrappings. I told him regretfully, no way. My grandma will beat me to death. Also, don't send me messages anymore. Your fiancé has changed. Gabula typed for several minutes. Then he sent a voice message. The signal here is not very good. His voice had an electric current sound. What does changed mean? Before I could reply, he said again, is there thunder on your side? I remember you are afraid of thunder. There is no thunder. A tractor passed by. I enunciated each word clearly and tried to make myself understood as much as possible. Actually, I am not the daughter of the Pei family. I am now feeding chickens in the countryside. At the beginning, the engagement was between the daughters of the Pei family. Now it should be changed. Right? There was silence for a while. Before he could speak, I hung up and then quickly blacklisted him. This marriage is an exchange of interests between two families. Now that we are not from the same social class, there is no possibility of being together. Short-term pain is better than long-term pain. I covered my face. When tears were about to flow out, I remembered that I was going to collect eggs next. Cry next time. When I left the Pei family, I didn't take anything with me. My adoptive parents repeatedly offered for me to take my own clothes and jewelry. I politely refused all of them. Their biological daughter, Aliyah, was standing aside. She grew up in the countryside. Lively and cheerful. Not restrained. She opened her clear eyes and spoke crisply. The mix-up was just an accident. It's not your fault. You can stay. I said, but I have lived a good life in your place for so many years. At least let me go back and live the life you have lived. There were too many lives. I almost bit my tongue. She scratched her head. All right then. Before leaving, I only added Aliyah's WeChat. She said she would send me the PDF version of Postpartum Care of Sows. If I had any questions about raising pigs and feeding chickens, I could ask her at any time. With full of courage and Aliyah's concern, I took the bus back to my hometown and started a life of cutting pigweed on the mountain and feeding chickens at the foot of the mountain. Once, Gabula told me, when the UK enters daylight saving time, it means the time difference between us becomes 8 hours. We can have 1 more hour to love each other. After half a day in the village, I have understood. Forget about all that lovey-dovey stuff. I only care about when my hens will lay eggs. So I turned and walked towards the chicken coop. The hen was lying on the eggs, making me not know how to start. After thinking for a while, I opened WeChat and asked Aliyah, the hen is lying on the eggs. How can I collect them? She sent a voice message. Her tone was lively. Big sister. First feed the chicken some corn and then collect. This is the famous Archimedes principle for chickens. I grabbed a handful of corn and spread it on my hand to feed the chicken. Then I reached in and took out a warm egg. After putting down the egg and washing my hands, I replied, thank you, Aliyah. Oh, don't be so polite with me. Halfway through playing the voice message, her voice stopped. In the background, there was the voice of my adoptive mother, Aliyah. Can you speak properly? I chuckled. Then I felt it was a bit inappropriate. I'll tap on an electronic wooden fish later and accumulate my merits back. At night, the family gathered around a wooden table for dinner. I was a bit restrained, and only dared to pick the vegetables in front of me. Grandma tugged at her apron and spoke in unstandard Mandarin. What's wrong? Ariel? Is the food not to your taste? Tomorrow I will kill a chicken. I quickly shook my head. No. She nodded and looked a bit awkward. That's good. If you need anything, just say so. I agreed. It's also good here. It's just that it will be a bit unaccustomed at the beginning. At night, Alaya made a video call with me. She was lying on the bed, propping her chin. Are you getting used to it, big sister? I said, I will gradually get used to it. She sighed. When will I learn your high emotional intelligence responses? I smiled. You are so smart. You will definitely learn it soon. You are so good at speaking. Big sister. Let's go cut pigweed together someday. I nodded. Sure. While we were chatting about our current lives, Alaya suddenly changed the topic. Why did you blacklist my brother-in-law? Brother-in-law? I hesitated. Who? Gabula. Now, even with high emotional intelligence, I don't know what to say. Alaya has just returned to the Pei family. She doesn't seem to know about this. I said, why talk about him? She said, he asked me to bring you a message. Oh, I have an accent when I read English. Let me take a picture for you. It's a passage from The Lord of the Rings. I would rather spend a mortal's short life with you than watch the vicissitudes of this world alone. Big sister, do you have anything to say? I thought for a while and couldn't explain a lot at once. I will have sweet potato porridge and a packet of pickles for breakfast tomorrow. Elias smiled with curved eyes. You really know how to eat. And next morning, the rooster crowed. I got up at the sound of the rooster, and had a bowl of hot sweet potato porridge with pickles as I wished. Then I could carry a basket on my back and go up the mountain to cut pigweed. Grandma said, you can just rest at home and don't need to work. I insisted. I should do the work that Alaya has done. She touched her head and was a bit confused. I carried the basket and took the sickle, following the route given by Alaya. I went up the mountain. The trees on the mountain were dense and the vegetation was lush. I couldn't see a single person for a long time. There was only the sound of the wind blowing the leaves. After cutting for half an hour with my head down, I got scared. Since I was a child, my adoptive mother has told me not to go to such a place alone. Even if I am harmed, it's hard to be found. The more I thought about it, the more scared I became. I ran down the mountain with a basket of grass on my back, running too fast. I also fell down. When I got home, I was in a mess. My hair was messy and covered with many leaves. Thinking of the hardships that Alaya had endured, I felt even more guilty. After there was a signal, I sent her a message. I'm sorry. Alaya. Big sister. What's wrong with you? I was a bit choked up. I didn't expect you had such a hard life before. Alaya, I'm not suffering. What did you do? I replied, cut pigweed. Turns out I am the innate saint of cutting pigweed. Give me the sickle. I was amused. My mood suddenly became much lighter. I thought I would miss Gabula very much. But when I was feeding chickens, I had no time to think about it. I am really fragile. After learning that I am not my biological child, I was almost broken. But the farm work I did made up for it. When I am busy, I will temporarily forget everything. In more than a month, I exchanged work experience with Alaya. Gabula found various ways to send me messages. I am so conflicted. While being emo, I am stubborn. In mid-December, as usual, Gabula will have Christmas vacation. At this time in the past, I would fly to London to spend the holidays with him. But now, I'm afraid he will roast my chicken as a turkey. Just kidding. There is a huge disparity in family background. We can't be together. It snowed for the first time in the village. I took a video and sent it to Alaya. She was very excited, and said she wanted to come back and take a look. She also missed her original family. While chatting, she inadvertently mentioned, Gabula has returned to China. I was stunned. Really? She said, he will also come to find you. If he comes to find me, then cook one more portion of sweet potato porridge. At night, I dreamed of Gabula. He was wearing a camel-colored coat and walking under the angel lights. Snow was falling like catkins. His eyes reflected the warm yellow lights all over the street. After I graduate, let's get married. I remember my answer was yes. But in the dream, I honestly rubbed my hands. No. My sow is about to give birth. I have to go home first. Then I was awakened by the crowing of the rooster. I got up, put on a big flower-patterned jacket printed with red peonies. Then I took the feed and walked towards the chicken coop. After feeding the chickens for a while, I went back and drank the hot porridge. Life is so simple and unadorned. It was almost noon when Elia came. The car stopped in the yard. She opened the car door, lifted her skirt and ran down. She ran into the house like a fledgling returning to its nest, and called Grandma. My adoptive mother slowly walked out. When she saw me at first glance, she frowned and there was a hint of distress in her eyes. Ariel, you have lost weight. She walked to my side and held my hand as usual. After suffering enough, come back. Elia doesn't mind having one more sister. Elia is a very good person. I know she doesn't mind. But it would be unfair to her if I go back. I shook my head. Forget it. She has lived such a life for more than 20 years. I know that Elia still needs a long time to get along with her family. And I am more affectionate with my adoptive mother and more like her. The Pei family has enough financial resources to let both daughters live in luxury. But I can't take what should belong to Elia with a clear conscience. I have lived a good life in her place for more than 20 years. My adoptive mother sighed and didn't say more. She looked into the distant mountains. At noon, Grandma killed a chicken. There were 2 chicken legs. Elia and I each had one. I seldom ate meat with bones before because it was not elegant enough to eat. Elia had no burden, and just buried her head and gnawed. My adoptive mother frowned and gave her an unhappy glance. In front of so many people, she pursed her lips. After all, she didn't say anything. After the meal, Elia cleared the table and went to the kitchen. My adoptive mother whispered in my ear, Elia is not as good as you after all. You were raised by me personally. You are much more sensible than her. I hesitated for a moment and still chose to call her Aunt Yun. Elia will be sad if she hears this. In the past, she just didn't need to learn. In the future, she will do better and better. She sighed. All right. All right. I stacked up the remaining dishes on the table and walked towards the back kitchen. Elia was washing dishes with a loofah sponge. Her movements were very skillful. I put down the dishes and stepped forward and said, let me do it. She said, I can wash them cleaner than you. Indeed. I insisted, there's no reason for you to wash the dishes. After some arguing, Elia made a little space for me. All right. All right. Then let's wash them together. Watch my high-end operation. I'll make sure they are clean. In the afternoon, Elia put on her old woolen gloves and came to me to build a snowman. As she rolled the snow, she chatted with me casually. Big sister, why don't you date Gabula anymore? The wind was a bit cold. I covered the lower half of my face with a scarf and said in a muffled voice, because the Kin family values matching social status. She said, but it's enough if the 2 of you like each other. I didn't want to keep entangling with him, and then be separated by our elders in the grand finale. Moreover, Gabula should have been childhood sweethearts with Elia. I didn't know how to tell her these things. I just lowered my head and said softly, when his family cuts off his funds, he will be obedient. As soon as Gabula was mentioned, I felt a bit tight in my chest. It was like there was a net in my heart. And the sadness was hard to vent. Elia, all right. I don't understand. Let's talk about the sow at home instead. The sow at home is about to give birth. She began to count on her fingers and tell me how to take care of the postpartum sow. When she said these things, she looked at me steadily. Ariel, you don't have to feel that I suffered before. Actually, I am very happy. I am the only child at home. Adults seldom let me work. I want to help on my own. I also majored in veterinary medicine in college just to return to the village and deliver sows. She paused and held my hand. Don't be consumed by internal conflicts. I nodded. My nose sour. Thank you, Olaya. As soon as we finished building the snowman, Gabula came. There was no room for a second car in the yard. He could only park his car at the entrance of the village first, and then walk over through the not thick snow. Olaya immediately stood up and turned and ran into the house. You two talk. I'll slip away first. I hadn't seen him for 3 months. There were tiny snowflakes on his eyelashes, and his fair face was a little flushed from the wind. Ariel, I don't know how to steer a boat. But if you are on the distant seashore, I will also brave the storms to look for you, this precious gem. He had said this love sentence to me many times before. But my state of mind is completely different now. What boats and rudders? Next time he returns to China and takes economy class, he will be obedient. I said, I don't understand. Speak human language. Gabula gave in. Even if you are in the village, I will come to find you. Let's talk. Ariel. We walked on the country road. His voice was as mellow as wine and fell into my ears. This is the first time I've seen you wear such a flowery jacket. It's also very beautiful. I sighed. I am no longer the young lady of the Pei family now. I have been educated since I was a child that even in love, there should be a matching social status. I can't help the poor. Well, although I am now the poor one, the principle is similar. If I marry into a higher social class, I will always be inferior to you. When you were watching the Angel Light Stern on in London, I was feeding chickens in the chicken coop. Gabula, cluck, cluck. Come and feed me. He so vividly interrupted my spellcasting. I had already been ready to shed tears in the snow. Now, the brood sadness is gone. He put his hands into the pockets of his coat and said nonchalantly, all right. I'm really not very humorous. But, Ariel, it's enough for us to love each other. My voice was a bit hoarse. You are always so idealistic. He lowered his head and looked at me. Your words still love me. It felt like punching a cotton ball. He said, I only recognize you, Ariel, whether you go to feed chickens or to clean manure. I asked, what if your parents don't support you being with the fake daughter and cut off your card? Your days studying abroad will be very difficult. Gabula, I have a full scholarship. Tuition is not a problem. I also made preparations in advance. I chose the safest and most affordable transportation method. I can take a bus to the northwest and then walk 100 kilometers every day. Crossing the English Channel is a bit troublesome. I will buy a swimming ring to put around my neck by myself. Don't worry. The one I bought is luminous. I can swim at night too. How long it takes depends on the wind direction and strength. There are also free self-service seafood on the sea. I can accept sashimi. There's no need to worry about accommodation. I can become homeless and receive subsidies for homeless people. He said a long string in one breath. I needed some time to think about it. When I heard about walking 100 kilometers, my mind started to shrink. Did you take the pig head from the museum and put it on your neck? He smiled. No. I just want you to see my sincerity. I took a light breath. Give me a little more time. Time to start a new life. Gabula wanted to see what I usually had to do. I took him to the pigsty. Then I put on sleeves and skillfully poured pig feed into the trough. The sow was about to give birth and also needed to be fed medicine and dewormed. The smell in the pigsty was not very pleasant. But there was no trace of disgust on his face. In the future, I will cut pigweed and you will feed pigs. We will live happily ever after. I looked at him calmly. Don't you know how difficult the mountain road is? Gabula, I've learned rock climbing. Another punch on the cotton. He said, what I mean is, love can cross mountains and seas. Mountains and seas can all be leveled. I rubbed my temples. Don't level mountains and seas. If you have nothing to do, go and sweep the pig manure. He went to the corner and took a bamboo broom and really started sweeping. After sweeping, he looked at me and asked seriously, "Do I need to carry the manure to the field?" I shook my head. No. It's winter now. He put the broom back in place. Although it's winter, my heart is not cold. The nearby pigs were grunting, and the chickens were clucking. But his voice still clearly entered my ears. Like a stone thrown into the lake. It stirred up thousands of waves in my heart. I turned my head aside and forced myself to calm down my emotions. I have been feeding chickens in the village for a month. My heart is already harder than chicken manure that has been frozen for 2 days. He sighed leisurely. Some people fall in love. Some people watch the sea at night. Some people cross the ocean to chase their fiancé but fail. I muttered in my heart. Some people get up early to feed chickens, and are packed by chickens. Gabula live in a homestay at the entrance of the village. And Alaya was also going to stay in the village today. She said she had feelings for the sow at home and had to deliver it herself to be at ease. I don't know how she persuaded her adoptive mother. Before her adoptive mother left, she looked helpless. But she didn't scold her. At night, Alaya came over with a pillow in her arms and stayed in the same room with me. We sat around the old-fashioned stove and warmed ourselves by the fire. The firelight flickered, illuminating her eyebrows and eyes. Big sister. In fact, the Kin family brought up the engagement again soon after you left. I was a little sad, I guessed. She said, "I definitely won't steal your boyfriend." But Gabula's father had to push his WeChat to me. My heart tightened. And then? She said. Then Gabula resisted. His card was also limited. He also took economy class when he returned to China. He is probably going to be homeless abroad. Seeing that he was so sincere, I agreed to pass on a few words for him. My mind went blank for a moment. And I subconsciously thought of Gabula again. The rich young master who used to spend lavishly now has to worry about the air ticket back to China for me. My heart felt stuffy. I said, "Please tell him not to do this anymore." Alaya waved her hand. "You both have mouths. I won't pass on messages anymore. Let's not talk about him. Big sister. Let's talk about serious matters." All right. There was the sound of falling snow outside the window. The room was warm and cozy. Very suitable for a heart-to-heart talk. Alaya hugged the pillow and said in a low voice, "In fact, before I went home, I had a big complaint about you." I knelt down and confessed. "I'm sorry." She said, "Don't apologize anymore. Before I saw you, I thought that if you were like other green tea fake daughters and wanted to target me, I would call a million netizens to give me tricks. But you left without taking anything. You were so fresh and left and were willing to return to the village to help grandma with work." She touched her chin and pretended to be greasy. "Woman, you are very different." She leaned forward, her eyes shining. "It's quite a fate that we were switched by mistake." I nodded and curved the corners of my mouth. "Yes. With a very small probability. I happened to walk on the life path that she should have taken." She said, "But my biological mother seems to be very dissatisfied with me. I have studied for more than a month and still don't have confidence to enter the company." I comforted. "It's just a matter of time. You could manage hundreds of chickens before. Of course, managing people is also not a problem. I still get pecked by chickens now." Alaya chuckled. "With your status, can't you just point at a chicken and kill it?" I said, "That's the truth. But I can't kill the whole family of chickens every day." She said, "But then again, would you like to enter the company with me to study? There are some questions that I really don't understand. For example, there are 12 liters on the scene but only 11 glasses of water. Help me, big sister. After all, I am just a weak, pitiful and helpless veterinarian. As for Grandma here, I will ask someone to help. You can't keep feeding pigs all the time. Can you?" I hesitated for a moment and nodded. After seeing that paternity test, I was at a loss for a long time and couldn't sleep all night. I didn't know how to start my life anew. I had already been going on step by step. At 22, I finished studying business information management and entered my own family's company to study. Then, in a few years, I would marry Gabula. All the plans were broken by that paternity test. I couldn't stay in the company righteously anymore and didn't know what to do next. In confusion, I could only return to the village and manage hundreds of chickens, and then negotiate pig prices with pig traders. Grandma always rubbed her hands, smiled and praised me with a bit of distance and courtesy. Ariel has studied in a foreign university. She is so smart. She can sell pork for more than 10 U on a caddy. I could only smile and agree. But my thoughts were wandering. What should I do in the future? How can I completely let go of my former arrogance and find an ordinary job to support myself? I don't know. Now, Elias spoke. She thought I could help her. I was like a drowning person who suddenly grabbed a floating log. With red eyes and a choked voice, I said, "Thank you, Elia." She said, "I should thank you, big sister." "All right. Let's sleep." She pulled the quilt and covered both of our bodies. "Good night. Maka baka." I didn't fall asleep. In the middle of the night, I quietly got up, put on my big flowery jacket, and walked outside. I pulled Gabula out of the blacklist and then, with trembling hands, sent a voice message. He answered immediately. The voice was very gentle. As usual, the ending sound rose, with a hint of a smile. "It's snowing outside the window. So is my heart. Is my fiancé here to pour cold water on me again?" Feeling timid as one approaches home. For a moment, I didn't know how to start. I could only ask first, "Have you bought your ticket back to London?" He said, "Yes." Only 2 words. I already had the answer in my heart. "Economy class?" He was silent for 3 seconds, and then said with a smile, "You guessed it." He took credit again and told me, "I squatted for a long time to buy the ticket. It only costs 600 yuan. I sighed. Youth has no price. The iron buttocks go straight to London. He pretended to be relaxed. "I may not come back for Easter. The next time I come back should be after graduation. By then, my wings will have grown hard and my dad will no longer be able to control me." Then, that voice gradually weakened. "Don't be separated anymore. Okay?" Gabula has already taken 99 steps towards me. I heard myself say, "Okay." A few days later, the sow at home gave birth. Elia delivered the sow herself, and also did postpartum care for the sow. After finishing the things she had been thinking about, she was going to take me back to the city. I got on the family car again. Elia sat beside me. Because of nervousness and excitement, her hands clutching the corner of her clothes were trembling a little. "I'm going to start a new chapter, Ariel." I smiled and said to her, "Come on, Elia." The car slowly drove out of the village. I looked back and took one more look at the place where I'd stayed briefly. After Elia returned, the Pei family did not officially announce her identity, but everyone knew it well. When the 2 of us entered the company together, everyone's eyes were meaningful. I didn't care. It was already very good that she could let me work in the company. I couldn't care what others thought. My position was Elia's secretary. I had been with my adoptive father in the company since I was a child. I was influenced by what I saw and heard. I understood the ways of the world, and also knew the customers we often cooperated with. The restaurant where Elia had her first meeting with a customer was booked by me. Each dish was personally selected by me after I inquired about the customer's preferences. I would list the precautions one by one and tell her. In the hotel corridor, I ran into my former friend, Anahi. She had once taken the initiative to make friends with me to help her family achieve cooperation with the Pei family and spoke to me humbly. But now, she folded her arms across her chest and sneered arrogantly. "Ariel, I really didn't expect that you have now fallen to the point of working for others." I knew her psychology. The face she had lost in front of me had to be regained when I was down. "Don't argue with idiots." I glanced at her infuriately and turned to leave. She stopped me. Her tone unyielding. How much did little president pay you? I can add a little. Working for me is the same. She added meaningfully. Besides, we don't have such a big feud. Did she think I had a deep feud with Alaya? I was so angry that I laughed. Just when I was about to scold her, Alaya came over. She stood in front of Anahi and her volume was even higher than hers. What capital do you have to ask my sister to work for you? You should grow some mushrooms in the cellar. If you don't have a cellar for cultivation, forget it. She was always sharp-tongued. This insult had to be thought about for a few seconds to understand. Anahi was stunned for a few seconds and then blushed. Alaya affectionately took my hand. Don't pay attention to the triggered sister. Let's go. Big sister. Teach me high emotional intelligence responses. I really can't handle those elders. I smiled. Okay. I rented a house near the company. Alaya repeatedly asked me to live at home with her. I politely refused one by one. I was afraid that my adoptive mother would compare the two of us again. This would make Alaya sad, since she scolded someone for me last time. My colleagues' attitudes towards me have also improved. Perhaps they only now found out that the real and fake daughters are not at odds. I joked with her. What's this? Sister's thigh. Hug it. She replied with a smile. Ariel. I've got you covered. Gabula has returned to the UK to study. He started to pick up a spatula and be self-reliant. It's raining in London. I miss you so much. What are you doing? The picture was a tasteless but a pity to discard simple version of white people's food. I said, don't rain. The corn can't be dried. Gabula, doing farm work again? I replied, just kidding. I'm helping Alaya organize forms. Then I conveniently transferred 5,000 yuan to him. Note, eat something good. Alaya paid me quite a high salary. I was a commercial locust. I often followed her to various meetings to enjoy the refreshments. I didn't spend much on food and could save most of it. So I simply subsidized Gabula, the homeless man in London. He sent a shocked emoji. Then he refused to accept it. Bro just loves experiencing life and picking up some trash to eat. You'd better use this money yourself. WeChat can be refused. I quietly transferred it to his Alipay. I accompanied Alaya to various occasions. She gradually became able to handle all of this and chat and laugh with big shots from all walks of life. When talking about me, she always said with a smile, this is my sister, Ariel. Her attitude was the attitude of the Pei family. So, in the eyes of most people, I became the second young lady of the Pei family again. In the summer, Gabula graduated. The white moonlight returned. Work was suspended. I asked for leave from Alaya in advance to pick him up at the airport. She readily agreed and then took out a contract from the bottom of the drawer and gave it to me. This is the dowry that Mom and Dad prepared for you a long time ago. 15% of the company's shares. There are also several sets of houses. The property ownership certificates and keys are at home. I'll bring them to you tomorrow. I was stunned. It's too early to mention dowry now. Right? I'm just picking him up. She touched her chin. All right. That's true. But you sign it first. I said, I don't want it. I won't take anything more. Alaya, but Mom and Dad have already decided to give it to you. I thought for a moment and said, then I'll give it to you. You are so kind. I glanced at the time. Stop talking. Sis. I'm going to pick him up. I took the subway first and then rode a bike for a while. On the way, I bought a cup of Mixui Bing Chang for Gabula. He had never drunk it. I bought it to him to taste. I only waited at the exit for a while, and he came out pulling his suitcase. Gabula had lost some weight. The short-sleeved shirt he was wearing was an old model from last summer. When he saw me, he curved his lips. You're here, Ariel. I nodded and handed him the freshly squeezed orange juice in my hand. He inserted a straw and started drinking. Did you come by car? I said, I came by bike. He was convinced. You would ride a bike for several hours to come and see me. Sure enough. You have me in your heart. Actually, I also took the subway. Forget it. Don't say it. I smiled. Yes. I have you in my heart. Because Gabula also had luggage and it was inconvenient for him to ride a bike with me. We could only take it axi. When setting the destination, I asked, "Do you want to go home?" He shook his head. My dad said that if he sees me again, he will break my leg. He had always known propriety and was worry-free. Unexpectedly, in his 20s, he would be so rebellious that the elders who had always been satisfied with him threatened to beat him. I was a bit guilty. All right then. Let's go back to my place first. I took Gabula back to the house I rented. On the way, he also answered a phone call. His dad's stern voice came out. "Have you admitted your mistake?" Gabula was very stubborn. "No. Dad. She is not some poor kid. She promised me that when I return from studying abroad, we will manage the family business together." The other side was so angry that his voice trembled. "Manage whose family business? It can't be mine, right?" Gabula said, "No. I manage yours. She manages her sister's. We all have a bright future." Then the other side hung up. Half a year ago, I might have been very panicked and felt that I had delayed him. Now, after working for half a year, I have become more open-minded. Yes, I am the bad influence. So what? At dinner time, I was about to order takeout. Gabula had already skillfully located the location of the vegetable market. "I'll do it." He bought vegetables, put on an apron, and cut vegetables on the cutting board. The warm yellow light shone on his eyebrows and eyes. Super sense of a perfect husband. Last year, our two families had already agreed that after he graduated with a master's degree, we would get married. But later, an accident happened, and no one took the initiative to mention this matter again. Gabula made a bet with his young master friends. He bet on whether he could succeed in starting his own business. Because of the bet, he borrowed several million. Then he started to be busy with work day and night at home. I was still like before, helping Elia handle various affairs big and small, so that she had no worries. Later, she was able to handle everything on her own and gradually got in touch with more business. My adoptive father was very satisfied with her progress and said with relief in front of everyone, "I really have two good daughters." He still regarded me as his daughter. Gabula succeeded in starting his business. His wings were really hardened. His father finally relented and asked him to go back and inherit the family business quickly. As for the engagement, it still had to be fulfilled. Elia gave me a vacation and asked me to prepare for the wedding. She still took out a lot of notebooks and said, "This is for you." My client's sister's best friend got married. His sister gave her best friend a lot of things. I can't lose to her. This strange sense of competition. I smiled with curved eyes. "You are so kind. Sis. I will always cling to you. Always. I have already gotten used to the role of a younger sister. I will be my sister's sycophant." In the past, I was the only daughter of the Pei family. My adoptive parents were very strict with me. They asked me not to show my emotions, and always be indifferent. I was almost kidnapped by the word, as indifferent as a chrysanthemum. The girls with similar family backgrounds couldn't get along with me either. We just got along politely. Only Elia is my only true friend. The person who can really call each other sisters with me. After Grandma learned that I was going to get married, she also prepared a lot of things for me. The livestock and poultry at home, such as pigs and chickens, will all follow me. Gabula set aside a piece of land in the yard for pigsty and chicken coop. When his dad saw it, he was unhappy again, and thought he was messing around again. Gabula said to me seriously, "The pigs and chickens are Grandma's wishes. I will take good care of them." I said in a low voice, "Is it possible that Grandma means to kill them and eat them?" There was a hint of hesitation in his tone. "Can't we not?" "I can't bear it." All right. Seeing the pigs and chickens off. A date abstract. but understandable. On the wedding day, my adoptive parents and biological parents all came. Among the guests, a small number were my aunts and relatives from the countryside. More were the wealthy relatives from my adoptive parents and the kin family. The big screen played the past between me and Gabula. At 16, I went abroad to high school and became Gabula's junior. The young man with budding love wrote implicitly, "This boundless universe is nothing but an illusion to me." I was ignorant and didn't understand romance. "Can you speak human language?" Gabula, all right. At 18, I accepted his confession. After returning home on vacation, because our families were well matched, and the two families also had cooperation, we got engaged naturally. At 21, I returned to China and started a long-distance relationship with him. He took pictures of every first snow in London and invited me. "Will you come before Christmas?" Until last year, I fell from the clouds and became a fake daughter. I returned to the countryside to feed chickens. For the first time, he didn't follow his family's arrangement and let his card be limited. He lived a tight life in London and almost became homeless. At the end of the video, his voice was affectionate. "Ariel, I don't know how to steer a boat, but if you are on the distant seashore, I will also brave the storms to look for you." This precious gem. This video was edited very romantically. Aliyah took the lead and applauded. Downstairs, as the villainous character Gabula's father. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Gabula and I looked at each other and smiled. From now on, our long summer will never wither.